Okay, so this is lesson 7.5, properties of logarithms. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the three properties you're going to use in this lesson. The first one is your log property of product, or log of product property, I should say. Word it the right way. Log of product property. Now, I'm going to remind you of your exponent properties. You had an exponent property that was called the product rule, and it would look like that. You had the same bases. If you had the same bases, you had your exponents. The answer to that would be I would add my exponents. Okay, so what you got to think of is logs are kind of like undoing that. So if I'm going to do the log property, product property, I would have the log of A of M, with base of A of M, sorry, log base A of N. So there's that addition that we use there. So remember, undo it. So now if it's addition, so now what did we start with when we started this one? We started with multiplication. So that means you're going to multiply the M and N. So the answer to that would be a log of base A, M times N. That's the product property for logarithms. Then you have your log of quotient property. And if you remember, this was I'm going to make a note, this is your exponent rules. So let's talk about our exponent rule again for quotient. So our exponent rule was if I had x to the third over x to the second, it looked like a fraction, it was a quotient, then to get that answer, I would subtract those two numbers. And that one would be x to the first, which would just be x. So now remember, logarithms are kind of like undoing that. So now if I have the log base A of M minus log base A of N, so there's my subtraction. So remember, undoing. So I'm going to divide these two numbers. So it's going to look like this. Log base A, it's going to be M over N. So these would be your answers using those properties. Now, the last one is the power property, and you do have a power property in exponents, but this one isn't as helpful. They aren't as helpful with each other. So this one's just basically, it looks like this. If I have an exponent of P, or I'm sorry, a coefficient of P, and then times log base A of M. So if I have that, if I have a coefficient, log of base A of M, then my answer to this is I use my exponents, log of base A, and then it goes M to the P power is how it changes. So I take this coefficient and it becomes the exponent of that M. Okay, so that's the power property. So the product property for logarithms is if I'm adding, then I multiply my numbers. If I'm subtracting, then I divide my numbers. And if it's the power rule, then I take my number here and I take my coefficient and it's now the exponent. Okay, so we're going to do some examples. So this is going to be what you'll see in numbers 1, 2, and 3. So what they do on these assignments is they give you the problem, and then what they'll do is they'll put a big box where they want the answer that they want you to find. So like this one, if I have log of base 7 of 11 minus log with base 7 of 3 equals log of base 7, what? That's what you're finding. Then there'll be 3 on each of these because you'll have all three types. You'll have your, you'll have, like this one's the quotient first, then you'll do, this one's gonna be the product, And you have to know that because is it subtraction, is it addition, or is it the power property? Whoops, that's the wrong number there. That should be a 56. So notice how this one, they want you to find the answer here within the problem. So this one is a quotient because it's subtraction. This one's product because it's addition. And then this last one is going to be the power property. And this one, they want you to find that box. Okay, so remember, if it's quotient, which is subtraction, this number and this number is what I divide. So my answer would be log of base 7 of 11 thirds. So that's what you would put in that box. This one is the product rule. Well, remember the product rule, it's addition, but we take this number and we multiply them. Well, this one, they already told you that they're going to multiply to equal 56. If you know this number is 7, then what would this number have to be for them to equal 56? You could simply do division, or if you know your math facts, you would know that's got to be 8, because 8 times 7 is 56. The last one is the power rule. So remember how that worked? Whatever is here, we would have the exponent of 2. Whatever the coefficient is, that's the exponent. Well, let's think about how you could break 25 down with an exponent. 5 2 times, right? Because 5 times 5 is 25. So that gives me what I have over here, 5, and then my exponent would be 2. So 5 is your missing number. All right, let's do one more of those. So this one's going to be log base 7 of 2 plus log base 7 of 5 equals log base 7 of what? Well, this one now is the product rule first. Remember, the product rule is it's addition, so you multiply your numbers. 2 times 5, so that should be 10 in that box. Okay, the next one, it's going to be a quotient rule, and we're going to know that because it has subtraction. Oops, box kind of got crazy there. Now this one, they're giving us that the fraction that we end up with is 11 over 8. Well, it's the quotient rule. So you go back here, and we have our 11, and we have our minus, so we know it's the quotient rule. Well, what do we have here? Well, it's the 8. It's the denominator of our fraction. And the last one is our power rule. And then what's missing in the box? So remember how the power rule works. We take this number, we take our coefficient, it becomes the exponent. So what is 2 times to the 4th power? 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Well, that should be 16. And then that goes now into that box. And that should be your answers for those. Okay, so those are your problems over your properties, your 3 properties. Product rule, quotient rule, and power rule. Okay? That's going to cover problems 1 through 3 on your assignment.